We are supporting the planning of a new regional hospital in Windsor-Essex.
Good day.
You think?
The provincial budget promises big bucks for the Windsor Mega Hospital, plus a new facility in Chatham, Kent. A live look outside here in Windsor today. 20 degrees right now, low chance of showers in the downtown area, but a good chance you notice the wind. The gusts are up to 70 kilometers an hour today. Colette Kennedy with a look at the forecast tonight. I'm Chris Ensing. Thanks for joining us. It's budget day in Ontario. The Ford government putting out their financial plan as the province continues to deal with a costly pandemic. Healthcare, top of mind for people in Windsor-Essex. Many politicians hoping that this budget would address the limbo of the decade-long fight to build the mega hospital project. CBC's Dan Takema joins us now live. Dan, it's a 230-page budget, a lot in there, but what's the big takeaway locally?
Well, Chris, the biggest news for Windsor-Essex is millions of dollars for the mega hospital. This is a long-awaited moment for the region. The budget includes $9.8 million to support planning for the controversial site. Now, that money will cover community consultation and things like the layout and function of the facility. Windsor's mayor says the funds mean it's now a question of when, not if, the hospital will be built. Local officials, well, they were very excited.
Short of the birth of my son and marriage to my wife, this is probably up there. So I can't be happier. Premier Ford stepped up to the plate, made a promise in August of last year to our community and technically to Chatham, Kent, that this was going to be the #1 priority and he was going to be an 800-pound gorilla and make it happen. And the 800-pound gorilla delivered.
It's a big win for the city, a big win for the region, and all of the hard work of so many people. And this determination certainly paid off today.
The hard work is just beginning, Mouget says, noting that Stage 2 is going to take 24 months to complete. Now, the budget also outlines plans for a facility that's 55,000 square feet in Chatham, Kent. It's expected to serve almost 30,000 families, providing treatment for thousands of children with special needs.
Now, Dan, another big point we've been talking about locally here, affordable housing. It's been another big issue. Did the budget address that at all?
Well, there was mention of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars the province has invested to support shelters dealing with COVID-19 and people fleeing from domestic violence. But when it comes to further benefits for affordable housing, Ontario is pointing to the federal government. And that's something a local housing advocate wasn't too happy about.
Housing ends homelessness, and that housing is everyone's business. So what housing advocates don't like to see is one level of government saying it's this level of government's job to get the housing built. We need both levels of government, the feds and the province, working together to address what is a 30-year housing shortage in this country.
Dan, another big thing we've heard about locally are small businesses talking about the effects of this pandemic on their finances. Is there any relief talked about in this budget?
Chris, businesses have been especially hard hit during the pandemic. Windsor-Essex has seen lengthy lockdowns, and now we've gone almost a year, or over a year, I should say, without cross-border customers. The CEO of the local Chamber of Commerce said this budget comes with good news for the community.
I think, there's support for healthcare, which is good news, support for a local new hospital, which is good news. A lot of our businesses, small and medium-sized businesses in the hospitality industry were struggling. So there is support for that. That is good news. There is specific support for, the vineyards, distillery sectors. And as you know, we have several of them here. So that is definitely a good news. So overall, there are things that Windsor-Essex will benefit from.
Naidu says the Chamber would have liked to see paid sick days and changes around interprovincial trade, but this budget seems to be about recovery. Chris.
Thanks, Dan. CBC's Dan Takema live tonight. We're going to take a deeper dive into what's in this budget provincially, knowing that getting the province through the pandemic is a big part of the spending plan for the coming year, but the budget also forecasts deficits for many years to come. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has more.
Oh, those feel really good.
COVID-19 changed just about everything in the world, but not this budget day tradition.
These are the shoes of a finance minister.
With new shoes, the new finance minister, Peter Bethlenfalvy. He becomes the third different minister to deliver the Ford government's 3 budgets. And this budget is dominated by COVID-19.
My job is to ensure we make every resource available to win our battle against the virus.
There's $1 billion allotted to Ontario's vaccination campaign. It's the first time the government has put a price tag on it. Hospitals are getting an extra $1.8 billion in the coming year to cope with any third wave surge in COVID patients and to handle the backlog of surgeries.
So we will be keeping operating rooms open late into the night because no patient should be left behind without the care they need.
The COVID grant for children created last year will be offered again, and this time it's doubled. That will mean another $400 per child and $500 for each kid with special needs. There's a one-time increase in Ontario's childcare tax credit. For the average family relying on daycare, it means an extra $250.
I want to just thank all the incredible, hardworking people in this province who each and every day go and do their job.
Small businesses whose revenues were battered by pandemic restrictions and lockdowns were hoping for relief in the budget. The government is offering them another round of grants of up to $20,000 each. There's also 2 brand new funds to help the tourism sector, totaling $200 million. The government is accelerating its plans to build new long-term care homes. The new target, adding more than 20,000 beds in the next 4 years. What's not in the budget? No real increase in education funding and nothing on paid sick days.
This budget doesn't even mention the third wave, let alone help people through it.
This was not a budget for the single biggest economic crisis in more than a generation.
The cost of it all? $186 billion in planned spending this year, and a deficit just over $33 billion.
This level of debt, as I've said, is not sustainable in the long term.
How long will Ontario stay in the red? The budget shows 3 different scenarios for getting back to balance depending on economic growth. The most optimistic is 6 years away. Today's budget is just the latest example of how the pandemic has changed pretty much everything. A party that got elected on a promise to cut the size and cost of government plans to keep running deficits until the year 2027 or maybe even longer. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
There's a province-wide push to launch a human rights inquiry into healthcare discrimination of elderly people. The CBC's Tamina Aziz reports.
This is where Katrina Simonato's mother lives. Months ago, this long-term care home had one of the worst COVID-19 outbreaks in the region. Her mother was one of the people who contracted the virus. Simonato says she finds the lack of care older people receive disappointing.
You shouldn't be taking programs away from anybody. Right now, we need those programs. You know, we need more space. We need more hospital beds. We need more community health centers. We need more people from the health spectrum.
She supports the province-wide call, agreeing with the notion that systemic ageism in healthcare exists. The group behind this push for change includes the Ontario Health Coalition, Ontario Council of Hospital Unions, and the Advocacy Centre for the Elderly.
There is responsibility to be taken at the individual facility level, no question. But there's also a systemic ageism in our healthcare system that treats the elderly as though their lives are not meaningful or not as meaningful, and as though their right to care is lesser than other people. And it must be challenged, particularly in the face of the horrors that we've seen in the last year.
The organizers behind this push cited a University of Toronto study which found only 1 in 5 long-term care home residents who died from COVID-19 in Ontario were transferred to hospitals before they died. For those living in the community, the admission rate was 4 in 5. They say wait times for long-term care homes in Windsor, Sarnia, and Chatham can range up to 4 years. Of the 401 total COVID deaths in the region, more than 96% were those 60 and older. The Ontario Human Rights Commission told CBC News that it did receive the group's request and is in the process of studying it carefully. The Ministry of Long-Term Care said in a statement to CBC News, in part, the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the systemic issues facing long-term care after decades of neglect and underfunding by successive governments. The work to modernize long-term care is underway with immediate staffing investments culminating in $1.9 billion annually to meet daily direct resident care and $2.6 billion invested to create modern and safe long-term care spaces. Simonato hopes something comes of this.
There's more discrimination. You'd be surprised how much discrimination there is out there.
She says there's not enough resources within the healthcare system, and as humans, we should be taking care of everyone to the best of our ability. That includes the elderly. Tamina Aziz, CBC News, Windsor.
Let's take a look now at how vaccinations going in our region. More than 70,000 shots administered in Windsor-Essex. That's 15% of the people with at least one dose so far. By comparison, the national average sits at about 7%. Now, the health unit's also reporting 19 new cases of COVID-19 today. The 7-day average dipped a bit to 24. There's 14 people in hospital locally with a case of COVID-19. There's also news around the assessment center at the Windsor Regional Hospital's Olette campus. They're cutting back on testing hours. That's going to start March 29th. They will be open from 8 a.m. until 3 p.m., a change from that 7 p.m. closing time. The hospital closed the Met campus testing site earlier this month. Officials say there's been a reduced demand and they need to free up staff to help with vaccines. News reports from India say that country is ready to stop exports of the AstraZeneca vaccine because of shortages there. And that comes as the European Union tightens rules around vaccine exports. The countries in the EU had already agreed to block shipments if there were shortages. As Tessa Arcilia reports from London, there are now additional questions for manufacturers before vaccines can be shipped elsewhere.
We are the biggest exporter of vaccines, and EU will continue to export vaccines.
They're going to be asking two more questions in these sets of rules. First is the vaccination program of the destination country better than the EU's? Because if it is, they feel that the vaccine should probably be staying within the bloc. The second question they want to ask is there a spirit of reciprocity? Did that country facilitate the sale or delivery of vaccines to the EU? Is there a sense of fairness in the transaction?
It's clear that in the EU we also need to ensure vaccination of our own population, and there indeed we are in a sense behind. Despite the fact that EU is one of the global hotspots of the pandemic.
The main country that will be affected by this is the UK. So far, the biggest recipient of EU-made vaccines, already 10 million doses to date. And also, the vaccination program here is going very well. So based on those new rules, if it comes into effect, there could possibly be blocked shipments. The critics of the EU are frowning upon this, calling it vaccine nationalism. And this idea will certainly worry countries, recipient nations. Number 2 on that list of recipients of EU-made vaccines is Canada. Tessa Arcilia, CBC News, London.
And the European Union is confirming that Canada will be subject to new requirements that could restrict shipments of COVID vaccines. Ottawa saying it shouldn't make a difference, though, because Canada's vaccination rate is still slightly lower than it is in EU. Therefore, those restrictions will not be triggered. Earlier today, the latest shipment of vaccines from Europe arrived in Canada. More than 250,000 doses of the Moderna vaccine touched down at Pearson Airport. Another 300,000 doses are supposed to arrive before the end of the week. And then there's another 1.2 million that are expected from Pfizer-BioNTech. That would amount to the biggest vaccine shipment to Canada to date. And there's a Canadian project that wants to help COVID-19 patients breathe a little easier. St. Clair College, they're an early collaborator. It's called the Canada Hood. It's a ventilation device that goes over a patient's head to improve oxygen flow. The college is testing how effective those prototypes are right now.
Within that clear marshmallow, we can increase the pressure so that patients are breathing in an atmosphere of a slightly elevated pressure. And what that does is it helps to keep our lungs open, and that helps to improve oxygenation.
Now, the device is going to be tested to see if it can help patients breathe in a variety of positions. The first round of testing will be on local respiratory therapists to troubleshoot issues like oxygen leakage. Testing will happen over 30 days in June and July. LaSalle will now let cannabis stores open up shop in town. Council voted to opt in to retail cannabis shops, originally opting out a couple years ago. Rob Katzman, who owns several stores in other municipalities, told council they haven't had any issues that would be of concern to the community.
Cannabis is a solid business run by solid people with a short leash put on us by the provincial government that at the end really helps us be proper, responsible business people.
Council approved it in a unanimous decision. Mayor Mark Bondi says he's looking forward to the jobs that will be created as a result. This now leaves Tecumseh as the only municipality in Windsor-Essex still opting out of having legal cannabis stores. The Windsor City Council is compiling a list of the city's 7 wonders. People are putting forward nominations on Chris Holt's Facebook page. He hopes to reveal the list next week. Says it wasn't meant to be anything formal, just caught the imagination of the public. You can see some of the images of some of the nominated spots. The tunnel being one of them, Assumption Church another, Sandpoint Beach one of those, and of course you have the Ambassador Bridge, another one of those iconic things that we have here in Windsor. But the most popular so far, it's the riverfront. Now, speaking of the riverfront, here's a live look at it now. A little windy, you can see the little bit of wave action there on the Detroit River. It was also named as one of the big prize winners during today's 6th annual Best of Windsor-Essex Awards. Best photo op, right there, you're looking at it. Colette Kennedy comes up next with a look at the forecast. Nature can be brutal and cruel, but it can also be inspiring. A photographer from Prince Edward Island was able to capture all 3 of those things when he spotted an epic showdown between a Canada goose and a bald eagle.
So I was out for a hike around the wooded area surrounding my house, and I happened upon seeing a dark object on the ice from quite a distance. So I took my camera out and took a test shot and noticed that it was actually an eagle. What I saw, I honestly thought the goose had already expired and was, taking some photos of the eagle, just about to enjoy his reward, essentially. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there was a bit of movement, and that's when I noticed the goose was still alive. The eagle certainly tried multiple times to leave with the goose in its talons, take flight and possibly drop him from height, but never got more than a foot off the ice. Yeah, so at the very end, there's a photo that's pretty funny where the goose just decides to have a drink of water, and the eagle puffs out his feathers and tries to dry out a little and takes off flying. He's decided he's bitten off a little too much that he can chew, and so he takes off and flies away at a very low altitude. That's really the real story, I think, is the underdog story. The eagle has all of the leverage, all of the power, all of the weapons, essentially, and he was a very aggressive eagle and knew that he had to finish the job off multiple times, tried to dive from the air down and take the goose out via neck, and it was quite a scene to witness. I did not think the outcome was going to be that the goose survived, but through great determination, courage, and he was able to survive. Kind of just strikes home that you gotta enjoy every day and also fight to the very end.
The ups and downs of that story, Colette. At first, you're looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, this goose going to survive. This eagle, the photos are brilliant. Just a reminder that it's worth just going out and watching what's happening around us every once in a while.
Yeah, I follow an account on Instagram, which is like wildlife and reality of nature. And sometimes I'm glad I follow it. And sometimes I'm just like, I know. It's natural, but it's almost too much on the heart.
Brutal out there.
Yeah. So at least our weather hasn't been brutal, but we're going to be seeing some changes here. So it's not going to get brutal, but that we'll get into some more significant rainfall coming as we go late Thursday into Friday. In between, though, we still have some fair weather in store. We're going to get into some clearing after midnight, those winds easing as well. Thursday, though, the late day changes. So we are going to see the clouds kind of rolling in, but the actual wet weather will arrive later in the day into the evening hours. And Friday, it still lingers a bit into the beginning part of Friday, at least, and some cloud condition even after that. And then we'll see clearing, but a windy day. So Friday, kind of the beginning part of the day, isn't looking all that pleasant. Daytime highs today, though, well, you can't really complain, I guess, about that unless you don't like the milder air moving in. 21 for our high, sitting at 20 now, a little cooler. Again, Chatham, Kent there, Sarnia, though, mild temperatures as well, seeing that flow coming from the south to southwest. Some of those wind gusts, this is what I said will be easing here as we get closer towards midnight, but you're seeing those gusts in a few cases at least, including here in Windsor, that you're seeing the gusts up to close to 60 kilometers an hour. Okay, so there's some development into Michigan. There are some thunderstorms embedded in here. I put the lightning strikes on so you can see that. Much of this, as you could tell, pulling kind of to the north of southwestern Ontario, but still tagged by a few little showers here and there as we go into the evening towards midnight. Again, just as those winds will be easing, so will that system be peeling away and we get into that clearing through the overnight. And then tomorrow it's that kind of mix in terms of our conditions where the clouds will come back in and then this system moves in. So tomorrow night and into Friday morning before it moves through. Yes, some colder air on the back end, but I wouldn't worry too much about that mix. That'll be into the north and the higher elevations where we get into that. So all you have to look at are the temperatures for tonight with those lows, 6 to 7 degrees. Likely a little bit cooler tomorrow only because of the timing of the system and the cloud cover moving in. If it slows down, we'll get warmer than that. And then we get into the temperatures calming down a little bit, Chris.
Not bad, not bad. And always nice there that now we finally have the sun to look forward to at the end of the 5-day. It's always nice when you have that little bit of glimpse, right?
Yes, but like we meteorologists just always do that, right? Whatever it is, 5 days.
Hey, tricks of the trade.
No, I'm kidding. It's not
I'm not
true.
trying to give
That's
it away.
not true.
That's
It's
not
science.
True. No, it's science. There's a science to this. Thanks, Ms. Collette.
You're welcome.
Now, another thing that we've been seeing locally here every year are just these birds that flock down through Windsor to go further south. But we spotted something a little bit strange this morning, and we're going to show you some of the pics. That's later. A massive container ship has run aground and is blocking traffic in the world's busiest shipping lane. And now nearly a third of global container traffic cannot get through the Suez Canal. The 400-meter Ever Given is jammed sideways across the canal. The 220,000-ton ship ran aground when it lost steering in high winds. That was during a sandstorm. Dozens of other vessels are now trying to get it out, and they're also waiting for it to be refloated. Egypt, they've reopened an alternate channel through the Suez Canal, of that Suez Canal, to try and relieve some of the pressure from the backlog here. But you can see this is a big project to try and relieve that backlog. Now, this canal, it links the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. It's the shortest route between Asia and Europe. Well, if you're in Windsor, you've seen the geese on the riverfront. It's certainly a local thing. The monarch butterfly is a big deal at Point Pelee, late summer, early fall, but spring, it's got its own surprises. Check out these visitors down in Amherstburg.
I went to a spot that I normally go to, and I saw somebody jump out of their car and run with binoculars to check something out on the lake.
I was on my way home and just had the opportunity to catch them in the backyard. We live right on the lake out by Amherst Point, and I saw them and I thought, wow, there's no pelicans around here. And then right away I started to look, I'm like, grab the binoculars, you know, and there was pelicans all in the backyard.
It was just fascinating to watch, and I wanted to capture it all as much as possible. So I ended up going through 3 full batteries, and I took over 6,400 pictures. So it really is quite a rare event, to be honest. And I even talked to other people in the area. I have heard that they've been nesting in the area for a few years, and they've seen them on Pelee Island. But people that live along the shore there have, to my knowledge, have not really seen pelicans.
This is the first time I ever seen them. I didn't even think they existed around these areas.
I had the same reaction there. For more photos, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. That's it for us. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We stream this show live on Facebook and Twitter every night. Feel free to watch us there. We're also on CBC's GEM app as well. The Rick Mercer Report is up next. Have a wonderful night.